Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, you are invited to drift across the quiet sea where stories unfold like waves beneath the moon. Each tale is gentle, meant to guide your thoughts away from the day and into calm rest. As you listen, notice the rhythm of your breath, slow and steady, like the tide itself. If these stories bring you peace, I kindly ask you to subscribe so you may return whenever you need a safe harbor for sleep. And if you wish, share in the comments where you are resting tonight and at what time sleep found you. For now, let the waves carry you. The night is yours. The sea is endless, and the stories will guide you softly toward dreams. The Turtle's Midnight Voyage. Beneath the silver glow of the moon, the ocean stretched endlessly, calm and unbroken. The waves rolled with a steady rhythm, rising and falling like the breath of the earth. In the quiet shallows near the reef, shadows stirred, round and gentle, as ancient sea turtles began to move. Their shells glistened faintly under starlight, each one carrying a shimmer of coral that seemed to glow from within. If these stories bring you peace, I kindly ask you to subscribe so you may return whenever you need a safe harbor for sleep. And if you wish, share in the comments where you are resting tonight and at what time sleep found you. The night was hushed, broken only by the whisper of waves and the turtle's quiet motion. Schools of fish paused to watch, their silver bodies catching the glow of the coral fragments. They swayed together like leaves in a breeze, then parted, leaving a clear path for the ancient travelers. The sea seemed to know that something sacred was taking place, and it bent itself toward silence and calm. One turtle, larger than the rest, led the way. Its shell was etched with patterns shaped by time and tide, markings so deep they resembled maps. Light from the coral on its back spilled across the sand below, illuminating the ocean floor. Small crabs paused in their tracks, shells gleaming as if dusted with starlight. Even the seagrass bent slightly, glowing faintly as though bowing to the procession. The turtle's path curved toward deeper water, where the sea became darker and cooler. Here, the coral fragments shone brighter, casting halos of pink, green, and blue across the rippling waves. The light shimmered upward, breaking the surface in gentle patches where it mingled with moonlight. For those who looked from the shore, the sea appeared to sparkle, as though stars had fallen into the tide. Far below, the turtle's glow touched hidden gardens of coral. Shapes long unseen were revealed, arches of reef, swaying forests of anemone, and caves where soft fish rested in their sleep. The turtles did not linger, but their passing left warmth behind. Wherever the coral light touched, shadows retreated. The ocean seemed to sigh, releasing its quiet secrets in gratitude for the gentle journey. The turtles swam on, their rhythms steady and unhurried. Each stroke of their flippers stirred the water into spirals that caught the coral glow. The spirals drifted upward like rising lanterns, shimmering as they climbed toward the surface. Slowly, the spirals faded into the vastness above, leaving behind only the trail of glowing shells, a moving constellation deep in the heart of the sea. As the journey continued, more creatures emerged from the dark. A pair of dolphins swam alongside for a while, their sleek forms illuminated by coral light. They did not leap or call, but swam silently, as though honoring the quiet of the night. When they turned back, their paths curved like ribbons of silver across the water, fading gently into the distance. In the stillness, the turtles' procession began to feel eternal. No one hurried, no one faltered. The water embraced them, and the world seemed to pause around them. Even the stars above aligned with their path, reflected in the sea as though guiding them forward. Each moment deepened the sense of calm, as if the turtles were carrying not just coral, but the very essence of rest. At last, the turtles reached a wide stretch of open water, where the sea floor fell away into a vast abyss. Here the glow of the coral fragments was most striking. It spilled across the edge of the deep like a lantern at a cliff, marking the boundary between what was known and what was endless. The turtles gathered, circling slowly, their light a beacon against the infinite dark. The circle of turtles moved with perfect grace, their shells glowing softly as they hovered above the edge of the deep. From below rose a faint current, cool and steady, as if the abyss itself breathed. The coral fragments pulsed brighter in answer, their light drifting into the water like falling petals. The ocean held its breath, waiting for the next part of the journey to begin. The lead turtle tilted downward, flippers folding like wings, and began to descend into the dark. The others followed without hesitation, each carrying its glowing coral deeper into the abyss. The light from their shells formed a staircase of stars, descending steadily into the sea's heart. Though the water grew colder, the glow was enough to keep fear away, a warmth against the endless dark. The deeper they swam, the quieter the world became. The sound of waves above faded, replaced by a silence that pressed gently against the ears. It was not heavy, but tender, like the silence of a long-forgotten temple. Each turtle glowed brighter in the darkness, and their combined light became a lantern for all who drifted behind, illuminating the path through stillness. Around them, strange shapes stirred in the shadows. Slow fish with wide, glowing eyes followed curiously. Jellyfish drifted close, their bodies like glass lanterns that flickered in sympathy with the coral light. The turtles did not break their rhythm. Their steady strokes seemed to reassure every creature that all was calm, that the night belonged to peace, not fear. The abyss opened wider, and the turtles formed a line that stretched like a ribbon of fireflies. Their shells lit the cliffs that dropped steeply into the depths, showing ledges where corals pulsed faintly and ancient sponges curled like hands. The further they swam, the more it seemed that the world itself was responding to their light, blooming again where it had long been dim. A vast cavern revealed itself, mouth open like a gate in the stone. The turtles swam into it, carrying their coral fragments like offerings. Inside, the walls shimmered faintly with crystals grown from salt and thyme. The glow of the fragments lit the space in waves of color, green and pink and gold spilling across the stone. The cavern felt like a cathedral, alive with stillness. The turtles slowed, circling the cavern's heart. In the center, a pillar of stone rose from the floor, carved smooth by the tide. It waited, bare and quiet, as though it had been waiting forever. One by one, the turtles approached, releasing their coral fragments onto the pillar. The fragments rested gently, their glow joining together, creating a single brilliant light. The cavern transformed, shadows retreated, replaced by the joined glow of coral. Colors spilled across the stone in shimmering bands, and the water itself seemed to gleam as if turned to liquid crystal. The fish that had followed swirled around the light, their bodies glowing faintly as they passed through its reach. The cavern felt less like stone and more like a dream made real. The turtles lingered, resting in the glow they had created. Their shells no longer needed to carry the fragments. They floated freely, their ancient bodies outlined by the warmth. Their eyes closed slowly, and their movements grew even calmer, as if the journey itself had been their lullaby. In the quiet, the light pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and sure. Above the cavern, the ocean stretched on, silent and eternal. The glow of the pillar reached upward, a faint ribbon of color that would rise all the way to the surface, where it might mingle with starlight. Those who dreamed near the sea would see it in their sleep, a lantern of the deep, carried by turtles who had journeyed through the night to bring peace. The cavern's glow spread outward, seeping into hidden tunnels and crevices. Small creatures stirred, drawn by the gentle light. Tiny shrimp flickered like sparks, while long eels glided from their holes, their scales shimmering softly. None of them disturbed the turtles. They moved in silence, honoring the glow that now lit their home with warmth not seen for countless tides. Outside the cavern, the ocean absorbed the light. It drifted upward in ribbons, curling into the currents like silk threads. Along its path, plankton began to glow, each speck mirroring the coral's gift. Soon the abyss, once silent and dark, shimmered with faint stars. It was as though the sea itself had grown a second sky, one meant for those who dreamed beneath the waves. The turtles rested in the cavern, their shells outlined by the glow. Their movements slowed until they appeared as still as statues, yet there was no weight in their stillness. They floated effortlessly, bodies guided by the same rhythm as the rising light. Every breath they took stirred ripples that shimmered like golden rings across the cavern walls. Far above, on the ocean's surface, the light broke gently through. The waves courted, turning each crest into a glimmering lantern. Those on distant shores saw the sea glowing faintly, unsure whether it was starlight or some deeper mystery. To the dreamers who lay listening to the tide, it felt like the ocean itself was keeping them safe. Inside the cavern, the coral fragments fused together, their light steady but never harsh. It was not fire, not flame, but something older, a glow that held no heat and yet filled the water with comfort. It seemed less a light to see by, and more a light to rest within, carrying peace into every corner it touched. The turtles drifted closer to one another, forming a circle around the glowing pillar. Their eyes, when they opened, reflected the coral's colors, as though each had taken a piece of the light inside themselves. They blinked slowly, unhurried, content. The cavern echoed with silence so deep it became music, a lullaby woven only from stillness and time. In the tunnels beyond, the glow reached even further. Anemones swayed in unison, their tendrils glowing faintly as they brushed against passing fish. Crabs scuttled into the open, their shells glimmering like polished stones. Even the sand seemed to change, each grain reflecting tiny sparks of light until the floor shimmered like a bed of stars. A soft current entered the cavern, carrying the scent of salt and the memory of the tide. It wound around the turtles and through the coral pillar, lifting motes of light into the water. They drifted upward like tiny lanterns, circling slowly before vanishing into the dark above. The turtles remained still, unbothered, as if knowing the current was part of the ceremony. The cavern seemed endless now, not because of its size, but because of the way the light transformed it. Shadows no longer pressed close. Instead, they blended gently into the glow, like the soft edge of sleep. The turtles, the coral, the fish, the current, All moved together as if bound by a single dream that breathed through the water. Far beyond the cavern, the ocean grew quiet in response. The crashing waves against the cliffs softened, the tide slowed. Even the winds above seemed to hush. It was as though the entire sea had chosen to rest, lulled by the light created in the turtle's journey. Those who listened closely could hear it in their sleep, a rhythm that carried them deeper into dreams. The turtles remained in their circle, drifting gently as the glow continued to spread. Their shells reflected the coral light, painted in shades of copper, jade, and sapphire. It was as if each carried a small piece of the sea's memory. Their breaths created faint ripples that carried outward, each wave blending into the rhythm of the ocean beyond. Above the cavern, schools of fish moved like ribbons of light, weaving through the glow that climbed toward the surface. Their scales mirrored the coral's colors, flashing briefly before fading again. They moved without urgency, each turn slow and graceful, as though they too had been caught in the tide of rest created by the turtle's gift. In the distance, a whale's song rose through the water, low and steady. The turtles did not turn toward it, but the glow rippled in answer as if acknowledging the voice. The song passed through the cavern like a vibration, settling into the stone and the sand. Every creature seemed to pause for a moment, listening to the sound as it faded slowly into quiet. The cavern began to feel like the heart of the sea itself. With every pulse of coral light, the water seemed to exhale, carrying calm through unseen channels. The turtles floated with half-closed eyes, their bodies swaying lightly with the current. Their stillness was contagious, and soon even the smallest fish rested, hanging in place as though wrapped in invisible threads of peace. On the surface, the glow appeared as a faint bloom beneath the waves, a halo that shifted with the tide. Sailors drifting in the distance might have thought it moonlight, but it was deeper, steadier, more alive. It was a glow not meant for maps or directions, but for hearts that needed rest. A light seen only when one surrendered to the night. The turtles stirred faintly, their flippers moving in slow unison. The circle widened, their glow spreading farther across the cavern. The pillar of coral fragments brightened once more, sending threads of light through the cracks in the stone. It was as if the sea itself had veins, and now they carried warmth, flowing outward endlessly into the dark. The cavern's ceiling glistened with beads of moisture, each droplet glowing faintly from the reflected light. When they fell, they drifted through the water like falling stars, dissolving gently into ripples. The turtles watched without urgency, their movements synchronized to the rise and fall of the glow. Time no longer felt linear, but soft, like waves returning to shore. Outside, the glow reached coral reefs long hidden in shadow. They shimmered awake, polyps opening to reveal blossoms of color. Tiny fish darted through the branches, their bodies glowing briefly as they passed through the light. The reef pulsed in harmony with the cavern's pillar, as if all of it had always been part of a single, forgotten heartbeat. Farther still, the glow touched drifting jellyfish. Their translucent bells flickered in response, each one carrying a fragment of the light into open water. They floated like lanterns released into the sky, rising and falling with the currents. The sea became filled with orbs of soft radiance, scattering the cavern's gift across miles of darkened water. The turtles remained calm at the center of it all, keepers of the glow. They had carried the coral here not for themselves, but for the sea. Their bodies moved gently, eyes half closed, as though they too were dreaming. The cavern pulsed like a cradle, rocking slowly with light and shadow. Above, the world grew quieter, touched by the peace blooming below. The glow drifted upward in steady spirals, climbing toward the surface like smoke rising from a hidden flame. When it touched the waves above, the ocean shimmered as though lit from within. Moonlight joined with the coral light, weaving silver and gold into the same fabric. The sea looked like a mirror holding two skies, one above and one below, both endless. Seabirds glided silently across the surface, their wings catching the strange glow. They dipped low, brushing the water with their feathers, sending trails of shimmering ripples outward. The birds did not call, nor did they linger. They simply became part of the rhythm, messengers of a quiet the world above rarely knew, before vanishing back into the night. The turtles remained still within the cavern, but the light no longer belonged only to them. It had spread across reefs, into tunnels, through currents, and now reached even the far edges of the sea. Creatures that had never seen light before glowed faintly, their eyes shining like stars. Every heartbeat of the coral pillar became a heartbeat of the ocean itself. The pillar pulsed steadily, brighter with each passing moment. It no longer appeared as a cluster of coral fragments, but as a single living flame of the sea. Its glow did not burn or consume. Instead, it gave endlessly, filling the cavern with warmth and stillness. The turtles floated around it like guardians of a secret that needed no words. The cavern walls sparkled faintly. The salt crystals caught the light, turning the stone into sheets of glass. Shadows flickered in slow motion, gentle and soft, as if they too had grown tired. The turtles glided closer to the pillar, touching the stone with their shells. The light flared gently, not in brightness, but in calm, an exhale that reached every corner of the sea. Above the cavern, a lone sailboat drifted, its anchor resting lightly in the tide. The sailors on board lay wrapped in their blankets, unaware of the glow rising beneath them. Yet in their dreams, they saw ribbons of color, soft and slow, carrying them into deeper sleep. The turtle's gift had reached them, unseen but entirely felt. In the far abyss, whales sang again, their voices low and steady. This time, the song echoed back with color, the glow pulsing in time with the notes. It was as though the ocean had learned to sing along, not with sound, but with light. The cavern glowed, the reefs shimmered, the jellyfish pulsed, all in harmony with the whales. The turtles' circle grew tighter, their shells nearly touching. They seemed content to rest in their creation, their journey fulfilled. They no longer needed to carry light. They had become part of it. Their flippers moved lazily, bodies swaying as though rocked by a cradle. The cavern's rhythm became their rhythm, steady, endless, eternal. The glow reached the surface in greater strength now, creating a halo visible for miles. To those who saw it from the shore, it appeared as if the sea itself was breathing light. The waves shimmered like liquid stars, each crest holding a glow before folding gently into the next. The ocean, for that night, became a lantern of dreams. Inside the cavern, the turtles closed their eyes. Their breathing slowed, their bodies still, yet the glow remained, stronger than before, no longer dependent on their movement. The coral fragments had become one, a light that would not fade. The turtles had given the sea a heartbeat of rest, and in return the sea gave them endless peace. The cavern glowed like the center of a dream. The water shimmered with shifting colors, each pulse slow and steady. The turtles floated in silence, their shells outlined in amber and jade. No sound disturbed the chamber except the quiet hum of the sea, a rhythm older than time. The stillness deepened, wrapping every living thing in a blanket of calm. The coral light stretched farther than sight could reach. Fish followed its ribbons, darting through shafts of color with unhurried grace. Even predators rested, drifting beside smaller creatures without hunger. The glow dissolved barriers, softening the instincts of survival until only harmony remained. For that night, the sea forgot conflict and remembered only peace. High above, the stars seemed to notice. Their reflections in the water blended with the coral glow until it was impossible to tell which light came from the heavens and which from the sea. The boundary between sky and ocean dissolved, leaving dreamers to imagine they floated in endless space, carried between galaxies of water and starlight. The turtles swayed gently in the current, eyes closed. Their flippers stirred the water in slow arcs, enough to keep them drifting but not enough to disturb the glow. Each motion sent ripples outward, blending with the light until it seemed they were painting the sea with every stroke. The cavern's heartbeat grew slower, steady, and sure. In the silence, even time seemed to pause. No tide shifted, no storm brewed, no wave crashed. The ocean inhaled and held its breath, as though waiting for all who dreamed to find their place in the rhythm. The turtles floated in stillness, guardians of a peace that required no effort, only trust. The sea itself felt asleep. The light reached into hidden trenches, brushing stone walls that had never known glow. Creatures stirred and blinked, their bodies lit faintly as though wrapped in soft lanterns. For once, the abyss was not empty. It was full of color, drifting slowly through the deep. The turtles had given not just a gift to the cavern, but to the entire sea. On distant shores, children dreaming of the ocean stirred in their sleep. They saw glowing turtles moving slowly through water that shone like glass. They felt calm spread through their hearts, though they could not explain it upon waking. The turtles' light had traveled further than waves, further than sight, reaching even the minds of dreamers. The cavern walls pulsed with quiet echoes, the coral's glow reflecting endlessly through salt and stone. It felt as though the chamber itself was alive, breathing along with the turtles. Each rise of light was an inhale, each fall an exhale. The rhythm spread through the water, through the reefs, through the abyss, carrying rest without end. The turtles remained as still as statues, yet they were not asleep. They had simply entered a deeper state of calm, one where movement was no longer needed. The light did the work for them. It spread their gift endlessly, carrying peace farther than they could swim. They were content to drift within it, eternal passengers of their own creation. The ocean outside responded with its own stillness. Waves slowed, breezes softened, even the stars above seemed fixed in place. It was a rare harmony where every element of the world aligned in quiet agreement. The turtles floated within the cavern, bodies glowing faintly, as the coral pillar continued its slow, steady heartbeat of light. The light rose again in a steady pulse, filling the cavern until every surface shimmered. The turtles floated in its glow, their shells reflecting patterns that looked like constellations. It was as if the sea itself had borrowed the stars, placing them within the quiet chamber. No fear, no hurry, only calm stretching outward into eternity. The current shifted gently, brushing against the turtles with a touch softer than silt. It carried the coral's glow further into the abyss, guiding it into unseen waters. Every creature it touched slowed its motion, surrendering to the rhythm. The sea did not resist. It welcomed the gift, holding it as though it had always been meant to return. The coral pillar pulsed once more, brighter than before, then softened into a steady glow. It did not fade, but settled into a calm light that would last through the night. The turtles drifted around it, moving in wide arcs, as though circling a flame that required no tending. The cavern seemed timeless, holding peace without effort. Far above, the sky shifted as dawn approached, but the glow of the cavern remained unseen to the waking world. Only dreamers carried its memory, tucked inside their rest. They would awaken with a sense of calm they could not explain, their hearts lighter, their breaths slower. The turtles had given them something they would carry long after sleep. The turtles' flippers stirred faint ripples that glowed as they moved. Each ripple spread outward, joining others until the cavern floor shimmered like glass. The water seemed alive, not just filled with light, but woven from it. The turtles floated quietly in the center, as if they too were part of the pattern, guardians of a sea remade in calm. The glow reached a final distance, touching reefs miles away. Their anemones opened fully, their colors blooming like soft lanterns. Small fish drifted among them, glowing faintly with borrowed light. The ocean was no longer divided between dark and bright, but balanced, every corner filled with quiet warmth. Even the abyss breathed in peace. The turtles rested without sound, but ease nearly motionless, their shells gleaming like carved jewels. Around them, the coral pillar glowed steadily, a light that no tide could extinguish. It was not loud or proud, but humble, meant only for those who needed it. The sea held the glow as one might hold a sleeping child, careful, steady, and endlessly patient. The cavern felt smaller now, not because the sea had changed, but because everything within it had grown close. The glow, the turtles, the fish, the stone, all breathed in the same rhythm. Time itself slowed, unrolling like a gentle tide. There was no need for journeys, no need for destinations. The turtles had arrived, and with them came rest. The ocean grew quieter still, as if the entire world leaned into sleep. Above, dawn painted the horizon, but the light below remained steady, hidden from waking eyes. The turtles floated in their circle, perfectly still, their gift complete. The sea embraced their calm, spreading it endlessly into every current, every shore, every dream. At last, the turtles closed their eyes, sinking deeper into stillness. The coral pillar glowed softly, its rhythm steady as a heartbeat, keeping watch over the cavern. The sea outside remained hushed, the stars above giving way to day, yet the gift lingered, timeless, a glow meant not for sight, but for sleep. And in that glow, the ocean dreamed. The garden beneath the tide. Beneath the moonlit surface, where the water grows calm and heavy, lies a hidden world untouched by storms. The deeper currents bend around it, leaving its silence whole. Here, at the bottom of a sheltered reef, stretches a garden unlike any on land. Coral rises like trees, swaying in slow motion, while soft anemones open their arms to the drifting tide. The garden glows with its own light, colors blooming where sunlight cannot reach. Branching corals shine faintly in pinks and golds, while blue sponges shimmer like lanterns. Tiny fish weave through the coral as if tracing invisible threads, their scales glittering as though dusted with starlight. The water feels alive, carrying the hum of endless calm. A cluster of sea fans bends toward the current, their wide fronds moving in harmony like pages in a book. They catch drifting specks of plankton that glow faintly, scattering sparks through the water. Each spark lingers before fading, leaving behind trails of silver light. The garden feels like a place not of survival, but of memory, holding centuries of rest. Near the heart of the reef, a hollow rock cradles a pool of sand as soft as cloud. Small shrimp rest there, their bodies nearly transparent, glowing faintly with the light of the corals. They twitch now and then, stirring ripples that shimmer across the floor. The hollow is like a cradle, where even the smallest lives are held in safety. Long strands of kelp stretch upward, their tips brushing faint currents that carry the scent of distant seas. The leaves drift gently, forming arches that sway above the coral. Fish slip between them without effort, vanishing into shadow before reappearing in shafts of glow. The kelp creates pathways like hallways in a dream, each turn leading deeper into quiet. A school of silvery fish passes through the garden, their movement slow, unhurried. They travel not to hunt or flee, but to drift. Their bodies catch the coral's glow, turning the school into a moving mirror that reflects the entire reef. When they turn together, the garden brightens, as if the fish themselves are carrying fragments of light. At the edges of the garden, tall spires of coral rise like towers, their tips glowing faintly with soft blue fire. Small crabs climb the sides, their claws catching glimmers as they move. They pause often, not to hide, but to rest. In this place, even motion feels optional, as though the sea itself whispers that stillness is enough. The water carries sound gently through the garden, not voices or song, but faint vibrations, a rhythm made by the shifting tide. The corals sway with it, the anemones drift, the kelp arches slowly. Every living thing answers without effort, as if the garden is one body, breathing. The silence is not empty, but full, a harmony of unbroken calm. At the center of the reef, a coral formation rises like a throne, covered in glowing fans and branches. It is not carved nor shaped by hands, only by time and patience. Tiny creatures dart in and out of its hollows, carrying sparks of light that flash before vanishing. The formation seems alive, not with power, but with welcome. The garden stretches farther than sight, fading into shadow where the glow grows faint. Yet even there, the stillness remains, a soft hush that holds the water. Those who wander here drift slowly, their bodies lighter, their thoughts quieter. The reef does not demand anything. It only offers rest, a gift from the deep, waiting to be accepted. Soft currents weave through the coral, carrying faint motes of light from one branch to another. The specks drift like fireflies, resting briefly before being swept away again. Small fish follow them lazily, their fins stirring the water into tiny spirals. Each spiral lingers before fading, as if even motion hesitates to disturb the garden's perfect quiet. Anemones sway gently in the current, their tendrils glowing faintly in shades of lavender and gold. They open and close in a rhythm as slow as breathing. Tiny shrimp shelter within their folds, venturing out only when the water calms completely. The scene feels timeless, as though this cycle has repeated for centuries without change, always patient, always soft. A cavern of coral arches above the reef, its ceiling lined with sponges that glow like lanterns. Shadows ripple across the walls, shifting with each wave that passes overhead. Fish glide through the cavern in silence, their scales catching the glow in brief flashes. The chamber feels like a sanctuary within a sanctuary, a place where even silence finds rest. Along the edges of the garden, starfish cling to stone ledges, their bodies outlined by faint halos of light. They move slowly, one arm at a time, their progress nearly invisible. Yet there is no hurry. The glow follows them, illuminating their paths as if honoring each quiet step. Their patience becomes part of the garden's rhythm, steady and eternal. Seagrasses bend across the sandy floor, swaying with the tide's pull. The blades catch drifting sparks of plankton, glowing brighter when touched. They shimmer briefly, then fade, leaving behind trails of color that ripple across the sand. The garden breathes with them, each sway a soft reminder that even the smallest movements carry peace. At the garden center, the throne-shaped coral glows brighter as the night deepens. Its branches release faint streams of light that curl upward like smoke. These streams merge with the currents, drifting outward across the reef. Wherever they go, shadows soften, and the creatures nearby grow still, as if lulled by a lullaby made only of color and motion. A pair of rays glides through the garden, their wings spreading wide. They drift just above the sand, stirring faint clouds that catch the coral's glow. The dust rises like mist, folding the water in silver haze. The rays circle once, then vanish into shadow, leaving behind only the slow swirl of glowing sand that settles gently to rest. The reef's edges curve upward into cliffs of stone, their surfaces worn smooth by time. Light from the coral paints them in shifting colors, turning gray walls into mosaics of blue and gold. Small crabs emerge from cracks, their shells catching glimmers as they move. They wander without purpose, as if drawn only by the comfort of light. Deeper currents drift through the reef, carrying with them whispers of the wider ocean. The garden does not resist them. It bends, flows, and sways, weaving the whispers into its stillness. The result is neither silence nor sound, but something in between. A hum so soft it feels like the pulse of the sea itself, steady and reassuring. From above, moonlight filters faintly into the water, touching the garden with silver rays. The beams mingle with the coral's glow, creating patterns that shift like woven cloth. Fish pass through them, their bodies lit in stripes of silver and gold. For a moment, the entire reef looks like a tapestry, each thread alive, each thread at rest. A gentle swell drifts into the garden, tilting the corals slightly before fading again. The motion is slow, like a rocking cradle, soft enough to soothe every creature into stillness. Even the smallest shells resting on the sand shift only a fraction, their edges glowing faintly where the coral light touches them. The water sighs and returns to calm. The sea fans sway wider as the swell passes, scattering tiny sparks of plankton into the water. The sparks drift upward like embers, caught in the shafts of moonlight that filter down from above. Each one lingers before fading, leaving behind a memory of glow. The reef holds these moments, weaving them into the stillness of the night. In a shallow alcove, clusters of clams open their shells slowly, their interiors glowing with faint blues and purples. The light spills across the sand like liquid, rippling with the tide. Small fish hover nearby, brushing the edges of the shells, their movements as delicate as whispers. The clams close again, returning to rest, the glow fading into silence. The rays of moonlight shift as the surface above moves. Patterns ripple across the reef, painting the coral in stripes of silver and gold. Each flicker passes without haste, as though the light itself has slowed to match the garden's rhythm. The beams bend and blend into the coral glow, two lights joining as one, inseparable in the calm. At the far edge of the garden, a canyon of stone opens into the dark. Its walls are jagged and tall, yet softened by the coral glow that spills inside. Shadows retreat slowly, leaving behind shapes that had once been hidden. Seaweed drapes across the rocks like curtains, swaying in quiet arcs. The canyon feels less like a passage and more like a doorway into dreams. Tiny bubbles rise from the sand, drifting upward through shafts of light. They catch the glow, turning each bubble into a sphere of silver. The bubbles rise in steady lines, strings of lanterns climbing toward the surface. When they break, the water above shimmers briefly, as if the ocean is exhaling stars into the night sky. Octopuses stir from their hidden dens, their eyes gleaming softly in the glow. They stretch their arms slowly, curling and uncurling with unhurried grace. Their skin shifts colors in time with the coral light, soft blues and purples rippling across their bodies. They move without rush, exploring gently before settling again into the folds of the reef. The coral branches sway gently, brushing one another in the tide. The contact creates faint vibrations that hum through the water. The sound is low, nearly silent, but it resonates across the reef. Fish pause in their drifting, as though listening. The hum is not speech, but a song older than memory, carried in the bones of the sea. Above the reef, a cloud of jellyfish drifts slowly past. Their bells glow in soft tones, echoing the coral light below. They move together, rising and falling with the tide, as if bound to the same breath. Their long tendrils trail faint sparks, leaving the water painted in ribbons of silver and blue. They pass quietly, lanterns of the deep. The throne-shaped coral at the garden's center glows brighter, its branches pulsing in gentle waves. The light spreads outward with each rhythm, touching every corner of the reef. The creatures respond by slowing their movements further, their bodies swaying with the pulse. The garden feels alive, not with urgency, but with the endless patience of the sea. The coral's glow deepened until it seemed to breathe, each pulse rising like an inhale, each fading like an exhale. The reef answered with sways of kelp, with the quiet drift of fish, with shadows folding gently into the light. The garden was no longer just a place. It was a rhythm, a heartbeat beneath the sea, patient and eternal. Sea horses clung to strands of coral, their tiny bodies glowing faintly in the reflected light. They shifted slowly, curling their tails tighter or looser with the tide. Their movements were so small that they seemed part of the coral itself, as if the reef had grown creatures to echo its calm. Their stillness carried the same quiet promise as the garden around them. In a sheltered pool near the coral throne, a swirl of plankton gathered. They glowed in soft colors, blues and greens, mingling until they resembled the northern lights moving underwater. The current carried them in slow circles, drifting without beginning or end. The pool shimmered like a dream caught in glass, a reflection of the ocean's infinite patience. The cliffs above the reef leaned over slightly, their jagged edges softened by years of tide. In the coral light, they looked like sculpted stone, a cathedral ceiling grown from the sea itself. Drops of water clung to the undersides, glowing faintly before drifting downward. Each drop fell in silence, rippling the sand below, vanishing into stillness. Crabs picked their way across the sandy floor, their legs tapping quietly like the faintest percussion in the reef's songs. They paused often, claws lifted as though listening. When they moved again, their shells caught the coral glow, polished and shining like gems. They seemed less like scavengers and more like caretakers, sweeping the floor with gentle purpose. The thrown coral brightened once again, sending gentle waves of color outward. This time the fish responded together, forming a circle around the throne. Their scales caught the glow, and for a moment the reef became a whirlpool of light. The fish swam slowly, not hunting, not fleeing, only drifting in time with the pulse of the coral. From the shadows, a sea turtle glided into the garden. Its shell reflected the coral's glow in fractured patterns, making it seem as though it carried a map of the reef upon its back. It did not hurry or linger. It moved through the coral slowly, as though passing through a memory, its presence a reminder of journeys already complete. The water above the reef shimmered faintly with moonlight, silver beams cutting down in thin stripes. The light touched the coral glow and bent into new shapes, weaving with the colors below. The two lights became one, neither stronger, neither weaker, both part of the same soft harmony. The garden basked in their unity, wrapped in silver and gold. The jellyfish that had passed earlier returned, drifting at the edge of the reef. Their bells pulsed slowly, mirroring the coral's rhythm. Together they looked like lanterns hung at the border of the garden, marking its edges not with walls, but with soft radiance. They hovered there, quiet sentinels, as if keeping the garden safe. The garden's calm spread beyond its borders, flowing into the sea beyond. Tides slowed, currents gentled, and the water settled into a hush. For miles in every direction, the glow carried peace. Creatures resting far away felt its rhythm, their movements growing slower, their hearts easing into the same quiet pulse. The ocean breathed in unison. The thrown coral pulsed steadily, its glow reaching the smallest corners of the reef. Even the grains of sand reflected it, shining like a scattered sky across the floor. Fish drifted above the glowing ground, their shadows weaving slow patterns. The reef felt infinite in its quiet, as though the sea had paused time to allow the garden to breathe forever. Soft tendrils of kelp brushed the eddies of the thrown coral, their tips glowing faintly in response to the light. They swayed as if bowing, graceful and unhurried. Tiny fish darted between them, their movements like sparks of silver fire. The kelp arched together into shapes that resembled doorways, as though opening paths deeper into dreams. The sea turtle settled near the throne, lowering itself to the sandy floor. Its shell glimmered faintly with colors from the coral. For a moment it closed its eyes and rested, breathing in the water with slow rhythm. Each exhale sent ripples across the sand, glowing briefly before fading. The turtle seemed to sink into the calm, becoming part of the garden. Above the reef, the moon shifted higher, and its beams pierced the water in long, silver shafts. The shafts crossed the coral glow, blending into shapes like woven threads. The ocean looked like a tapestry unrolling in silence, silver above, gold below, the two meeting in endless harmony. The reef glimmered within it, steady and unbroken. At the farthest edge of the garden, sea urchins clustered in the shadows, their spines tipped with faint glimmers. They looked like tiny constellations scattered across the stone. Each time the current moved, their glow shifted slightly, flickering like stars. The reef held them gently, their stillness adding to the quiet chorus of the sea. The jellyfish lanterns at the border pulsed again, their glow soft and even. They seemed to mark the reef not as a boundary, but as an invitation, welcoming all who drifted near. The light from their bells mingled with the coral glow, forming a halo that shimmered at the edge of the garden. It was less a border and more a sigh, spreading outward. The currents that reached the reef slowed further, their once restless paths now shortened. They bent around the coral as though drawn to the glow, circling gently before slipping away. In their wake they left trails of calm, carrying fragments of light into the sea beyond. Even in the far abyss, the current's touch carried a trace of rest. The rays returned, gliding once more across the sandy floor. This time they carried faint dust clouds with them, each grain glowing softly in the coral light. The clouds rose and drifted like fog, blurring the reef into dreamlike shapes. The rays passed silently, wings moving like pages turning, before fading again into the quiet shadows. Every part of the garden moved together now, as if guided by one breath. The kelp swayed, the fish drifted, the jellyfish pulsed, all in the same slow rhythm. Even the shadows followed, folding gently into the light. The reef no longer felt like many pieces, but one whole, a single dream given shape beneath the tide. The thrown coral released another wave of glow, stronger and steadier than before. The light traveled far, climbing upward toward the moonlit surface and downward into the deepest trenches. It was not a flare, not a blaze, but a pulse that spread endlessly, carrying the garden's quiet heart to every corner of the sea. The sea turtle lifted slowly from the sand, circling once around the thrown coral before gliding outward. Its path was unhurried, flippers moving with the same rhythm as the glow. It seemed to carry the light on its back, scattering reflections into the water. Wherever it drifted, fish followed briefly, then settled back into stillness once more. Tiny bubbles escaped from cracks in the stone, rising in long, winding trails. Each bubble caught the coral's glow, turning into orbs of faint silver. They drifted upward through the beams of moonlight, glowing brighter as they climbed. When they reached the surface, they vanished, leaving only ripples that shimmered for a heartbeat before fading. The thrown coral pulsed again, but this time the rhythm slowed, each glow lasting longer before softening. The reef answered in kind. Fish barely moved, kelp swayed less, and the jellyfish hung still, as though the entire garden had entered a deeper layer of calm. The sea seemed to breathe less often, conserving its energy in stillness. The cliffs at the garden's edge glistened faintly, their walls reflecting fragments of glow like crystal mirrors. Each reflection shimmered for a moment before fading into the stone, leaving behind only the memory of color. The reef did not cling to brightness. It let each glow pass gently, as though reminding all that rest was not in holding, but in release. The currents grew softer still, until they were no more than whispers against the coral. They carried the glow outward, but the motion was so slight that the water seemed frozen. In this slowness, the reef felt suspended outside of time, a dream caught between tides. Every creature floated as though resting in the cradle of the sea itself. Schools of tiny fish gathered near the thrown coral, circling in slow spirals. Their movement was almost invisible. Each turned so gentle that it seemed more like drifting than swimming. Their scales glimmered with the coral light, scattering specks of gold across the reef. Together, they looked like a constellation unfolding beneath the tide. A hush fell deeper across the reef, not silence, but fullness. The garden seemed to hum with a quiet that was alive, steady, and endless. Even the smallest shells gleamed faintly in the glow, as though marked by the coral's gift. The reef had become less a place and more a presence, a stillness that reached into every fold of the sea. Above the garden, the moon's reflection shimmered on the waves. Its light bent down through the water, touching the reef with silver threads. The coral glow rose to meet it, joining the two lights together. For a moment, the boundary between ocean and sky dissolved, and the garden seemed to float in both worlds at once, timeless and whole. The rays returned once more, circling the reef with even slower movements than before. They stirred only faint trails of glowing sand, small enough to vanish almost immediately. Their wings brushed to the coral glow, carrying it outward like smudges of gold on water. When they faded again, it was as though the sea itself had sighed in contentment. The thrown coral pulsed again, the glow steady, calm, and endless. It did not brighten or fade now, but held a single tone of light, soft enough to soothe, strong enough to last. The creatures of the reef floated in silence, their hearts slowed to match the rhythm. The garden had reached its deepest rest, a peace that belonged not to time but to eternity. The glow of the thrown coral spread outward in steady waves, carrying warmth into the farthest reaches of the reef. Each wave softened shadows and turned darkness into calm light. Even the outer edges of the garden, once quiet but dim, now shimmered faintly. It was as though the reef had grown an endless horizon, bound together by stillness. The sea turtle returned briefly, circling the throne once more before vanishing into the open ocean. Its presence left behind a trail of shimmering ripples, glowing for a moment before fading. The reef did not cling to its visitor. It simply accepted the turtle's journey as part of the rhythm, another movement within the eternal garden. The fish spiraled slower, their circles wide and loose. Their bodies caught the coral glow in soft flashes, then dimmed as they drifted into shadow. The reef no longer needed brightness. It had settled into a deeper light, one that asked for nothing more than stillness. Every motion felt like a dream, as though even time had fallen asleep. At the reef's edges, the jellyfish lanterns hung motionless, their bells glowing faintly. They no longer pulsed, but drifted in quiet suspension. Their tendrils swayed only slightly, brushing the glow into the surrounding water. They looked like sentinels, watching over the garden, guardians not with strength, but with softness, holding the silence intact. The cliffs rose dark and tall, yet even they seemed softened by the coral glow. Their shadows no longer loomed, but folded gently into the reef's light. Crabs tucked themselves into hollows, shells glowing faintly as they settled. The cliffs felt less like boundaries and more like arms, cradling the garden in a timeless embrace. A hush spread upward into the ocean above, softening the waves on the surface. The moon's reflection grew clearer, unmarred by restless tides. The glow of the reef climbed to meet it, blending silver and gold across the water. For that night the sea was still, as though sky and ocean had agreed to rest together in the same dream. The reef's creatures closed their eyes or drifted with bodies limp, carried only by the tide. Their movements slowed until they became indistinguishable from the coral branches swaying around them. All life within the garden surrendered to the same rhythm, breathing together, dreaming together. The garden's light guided them deeper into calm. The thrown coral remained steady, its glow unwavering. It no longer pulsed or shifted, but held a constant light, enough to keep the reef bathed in warmth. The stillness it created became the water itself, wrapping the reef in a peace that reached into every stone, every grain of sand, every hidden cavern. It was the ocean's final exhale. Beyond the reef, the ocean remained hushed, carrying fragments of light into distant places. Even shores far away seemed quieter, waves gentler, breezes softer. Dreamers on land felt the calm without knowing its source, their hearts matching the rhythm of the reef's glow. The garden had become more than a place. It had become a lullaby. At last, the glow of the coral settled into permanence. It would remain through the night, steady and endless, long after the creatures had drifted into deep rest. The garden beneath the tide had given its gift fully, asking nothing in return, and in its glow the sea itself seemed to dream, holding the night in a cradle of calm. The Song of the Whale. Far out in the open sea, where the horizon fades into endless blue, a single whale drifted beneath the waves. Its body moved with slow grace, fast yet gentle, each stroke of its tail sending ripples through the water. The ocean held it in silence, as if waiting for the first sound, the first note of a song older than memory. Far out in the open sea, where the horizon fades into endless blue, a single whale drifted beneath the waves. Its body moved with slow grace, fast yet gentle, each stroke of its tail sending ripples through the water. The ocean held it in silence, as if waiting for the first sound, the first note of a song older than memory. The whale opened its mouth, and a low tone spread through the water. It was deep, steady, and patient, carrying farther than sight could reach. The sound rolled across reefs, through caverns, into trenches where no light had ever touched. The sea answered with stillness, holding the note as though it was sacred, a call meant to soothe rather than summon. Other whales heard the note and responded. Their voices rose one by one, weaving together into a chorus that carried through the currents. Each song was different, yet none clashed. They moved like threads in fabric, blending into harmony. The ocean became an instrument, its body vibrating with the whales' voices, soft and eternal. Fish paused in their drifting to listen. Rays stilled their wings, mid-glide hovering as the sound rolled past. Even the currents seemed to slow, bending into the rhythm of the whales. The songs were not commands, nor were they cries. They were lullabies woven into water, calling everything within it to rest. The lead whale sang again, longer this time, a tone that deepened until it felt more like touch than sound. The water vibrated softly against shells, rocks, and coral. Every living thing felt it in their bones, a hum that erased worry, leaving behind only calm. The ocean became less a place and more a cradle, rocking gently with sound. The songs rose and fell like tides, never hurried, never sharp. Some were high and haunting, others deep and steady, all flowing together into a single, unbroken wave. The ocean carried them in every direction. Even the farthest reaches of the abyss heard the lullaby, and the dark there grew softer, less heavy, less endless. Above the surface, the sea responded as well. Waves rolled in slower arcs, their crests glimmering with moonlight. The stars above reflected more clearly, as if the water had stilled itself to listen. On distant shores, sleepers stirred in their beds, unaware that the whale song had reached them, yet breathing deeper as if guided by its rhythm. The whale glided forward slowly, its massive body stirring gentle currents that blended with the sound. Around it swam small fish, drawn not by fear or hunger but by calm. They moved in loose patterns, mirroring the waves of song, as though even their bodies had been taught the melody. The ocean glowed faintly, alive with harmony. A younger whale lifted its voice, shy and hesitant. Its song trembled at first, unsure, but the others answered, folding it into the chorus. The sound grew steadier, bolder, until it no longer wavered. The sea held it gently, carrying its voice farther than it could imagine. Every note became part of the whole, never alone, always supported. The chorus swelled, a tide of sound, moving without haste, rolling endlessly through the water. It was not a song of longing or distance. It was a song of presence, of simply being. The whales drifted as they sang, their vast bodies glowing faintly in the moonlit sea. Guardians of the music meant not for ears, but for hearts at rest. The whales' voices wove together in layers, rising and falling like gentle waves. Each tone seemed to linger in the water long after it was sung, blending with the next until the ocean itself hummed with resonance. The sound was both vast and intimate, surrounding every creature while also reaching inward, into places where only dreams could go. In the deep trenches where light never reached, the song arrived as a vibration in the stone. Crabs paused on jagged ledges, antennae trembling in response. Creatures that had never known melody felt the echo within their shells. The darkness softened. The abyss, usually heavy and still, seemed to breathe along with the song, releasing its silence into calm. Far above, the moonlight silvered the surface, bending into the waves. The whale's song rose beneath it, invisible yet strong, joining sky and ocean in harmony. To any sailor who drifted nearby, the night would feel unusually quiet. Their hearts would slow, their eyes would close, and dreams would come gently, carried by the unseen lullaby beneath their ship. The lead whale dove deeper, its body a shadow gliding through the water. As it descended, the song thickened, vibrating through the pressure, reaching stones and sands untouched for centuries. The cavernous sound filled hidden places, carving rest into the very shape of the sea. The deep no longer felt heavy, but safe, cradled by endless resonance. Other whales followed, circling the lead in slow arcs. Their bodies moved like planets in orbit, each leaving a trail of sound that merged into the whole. Together they formed a living constellation, a map of harmony drifting in the sea. Their songs blended with the rhythm of their movements, creating music too large for any one creature to hold. Fish gathered near the circle, their scales glimmering with reflections of faint moonlight above. They swam slowly, guided not by instinct but by song. Each movement mirrored the rhythm, tails flicking in time with the deep tones. The school looked like ripples of starlight, caught in a melody that carried them deeper into stillness. The young whale lifted its voice again, stronger now, its tone climbing above the others. Instead of being swallowed by the chorus, it shone within it, a thread woven brightly into the fabric of sound. The older whales responded, lowering their notes in support. The ocean vibrated with the bond, their voices layered into a single, endless breath. Currents shifted, carrying the song outward like invisible rivers. The sound traveled past reefs and caverns, over ridges and through valleys of stone. Wherever it went, the sea slowed. Creatures rested, shadows softened. Even the currents themselves seemed to pause before moving again. The song was not only heard, it was felt in every corner of the water. Above, seabirds wheeled silently across the surface. Though they could not hear the full depth of the song, they felt its rhythm in the slowing tide. Their wings beat more gently, their calls muted. They drifted with the air currents, their movements mirroring the whales below. Even the sky seemed caught in the hush of the ocean's lullaby. The chorus continued, unbroken, steady as the heartbeat of the world. Each whale sang, not to be heard, but to be part of something greater. Their voices carried across miles, weaving into a net of calm that held the ocean together. Beneath the waves, in silence and song, the sea surrendered to rest, drifting deeper into its own dream. The whales moved as one, their bodies circling in a slow spiral. With each turn, their voices rose and fell, echoing through the water in patterns that felt both endless and familiar. The spiral became a dance of sound, not rushed, not rehearsed, but natural. As if the sea itself had taught them the steps long ago. The young whale drifted closer to the center of the spiral, its song steady now. The older whales adjusted their tones, weaving its voice into theirs. The sound wrapped around the younger one like a blanket, lifting its melody higher. Together they formed a harmony that shimmered through the water like sunlight on glass, warm and tender. The sea responded with stillness. Schools of fish that usually darted and scattered swam slowly in unison, drawn into the spiral. They mirrored the whale's path, forming rings of light around them. Their scales caught the glow of distant moonbeams, scattering silver sparks into the water. The spiral widened, a living constellation drifting in the ocean. The sound deepened, reaching into stone ridges and hidden caves. Within those shadows, creatures stirred, not in fear, but in rest. The song filled every crevice, wrapping the ocean floor in sound that felt like touch. The earth beneath the sea seemed to hum in answer, its weight soft by the music above, its silence turned to calm. The whales rose slowly, carrying the spiral upward. Their voices carried with them, rising through the layers of water until they touched the surface. Waves caught the rhythm, cresting in time with the notes. The sea breathed with the song, each exhale a swell, each inhale a stillness. Even the air above carried the hush of the melody. A pair of dolphins joined the spiral, their smaller voices blending easily into the harmony. They darted in wide arcs around the whales, adding higher tones to the deep chorus. Their movements were playful yet unhurried, their bodies weaving light trails in the water. The ocean carried their notes outward, folding them into the whale's song seamlessly. The spiral reached its widest point, spreading sound across the sea. It moved in waves, soft but strong, filling the water from surface to trench. No current resisted it. The sound moved freely, a tide of calm that had no boundaries. The ocean itself seemed transformed into an instrument, vibrating with harmony too vast to measure. Above, the stars reflected more clearly in the surface. Each crest of a wave mirrored a cluster of light, and with the song beneath, it felt as though the heavens had sunk into the water. The line between sea and sky disappeared, leaving dreamers to imagine they were floating between galaxies, carried gently by music. The young whale sang again, its voice bright and steady. The older whales echoed, layering their tones in support. The dolphins wove high notes through the sound, like threads of silver in a tapestry. The harmony grew deeper, richer, yet never loud. It was not a performance, but a heartbeat, a rhythm meant only for peace. The spiral began to tighten again, the whales closing their circle. Their bodies moved closer, their voices blending into a single tone that stretched across the sea. It was long, low, and steady, filling the water with calm. The ocean held the note like a secret, its vibration spreading endlessly, until even the stars seemed to hum in answer. The circle of whales moved as though guided by an unseen tide, their voices blending into one continuous flow. The dolphins lingered nearby, weaving playful arcs through the spiral. Their high tones flickered like sparks above the deeper voices, creating balance. Together they shaped a melody vast enough to fill the horizon, yet soft enough to lull even the sea to sleep. The sound carried into shallow waters, where coral reefs caught the vibration. The branches quivered gently, their polyps opening wider as though listening. Fish sheltered in the corals stirred with faint ripples, then stilled again, caught in the rhythm. Even the smallest grains of sand seemed to pulse faintly, glowing as they reflected threads of moonlight. Far above, the night sky spread wide, stars glittering across the surface of the water. Their reflections shimmered between the waves, broken but never lost. The song rose to meet them, unseen but felt. To any dreamer on shore, the ocean seemed unusually alive, as if it held secrets in its depths too gentle for the waking world to disturb. The young whale lingered at the center of the spiral, its voice steady now, carrying tones rich and full. The older whales adjusted their notes, creating a platform for it to shine. Their support was patient, endless, like roots of an ancient tree holding up a growing branch. The melody expanded outward, carrying the confidence of a voice now found. The dolphins darted higher, breaking briefly through the surface. Drops of water fell like silver rain, scattering in moonlight before merging again with the sea. Their notes remained below, lingering even after their bodies disappeared into the night air. It was as if the song itself had leaped out to touch the stars before returning home. The spiral slowed, movements growing smaller, voices deepening into longer notes. The whales drifted closer together, their bodies forming a constellation of shadows in the glowing water. Every tone carried weight but no heaviness, a deep hum that steadied the ocean. The song was less a performance now and more a prayer, offered to silence itself. In the trenches below, shadows lifted faintly. Creatures that had never known light swayed to the vibration, their movements instinctive, guided only by the hum. The sound reached their shells, their bones, their hidden dens, filling them with ease. Even in the deepest dark, the song carried calm, erasing the loneliness of distance with harmony. The lead whale lifted its voice again, a note that rose higher than before, carrying longing not for what was missing but for peace itself. The chorus answered, deep and steady. The dolphins added their silver threads. The result was a melody that circled endlessly, never beginning, never ending, as though the sea had always been singing. The current shifted gently, bending around the spiral of whales. It carried the song outward in new directions, brushing distant shores. On beaches where waves rolled quietly, sleepers stirred, dreams softened, breath deepened, and hearts eased into the same rhythm as the whales below. The song had crossed boundaries, reaching even into human rest. The spiral drew tighter, the whales' bodies glowing faintly in the moonlit water, their voices steadied into one long tone, unbroken, held together by patience. It resonated through the sea like the sound of the earth itself breathing. The ocean's vastness shrank into intimacy, as though every listener, no matter how small, was being cradled in its embrace. The whales held their formation, circling in perfect rhythm. Their voices layered into tones so deep the water itself vibrated. Fish drifted near the edges, caught in the resonance, their movements gentle and slow. The dolphins lingered above, weaving small arcs of silver through the darkness. All life in the sea seemed to breathe in time with the chorus. The young whale's voice rose again, now confident and strong. Its note shimmered in the water, high enough to cut through the deepest tones, but soft enough to blend seamlessly. The chorus answered by lowering, creating space for its sound to shine. The ocean held the balance gently, as though the sea itself was proud of the voice it carried. Far away, the song brushed against reefs and lagoons, slipping into places where waters were shallow. Even there, among rocks and tide pools, the vibration could be felt. Crabs shifted in their shells, anemones swayed, and the smallest fish stilled. The calm spread outward like light through glass, filling every hollow and shadow with the same peace. The spiral widened once more, a constellation drifting beneath the waves. The whales glided with patience, their massive bodies weightless in the dark. Their voices did not strain, but flowed like rivers, endless and steady. The dolphins wove between them, their playful arcs softened by the surrounding calm. It was harmony without effort, a dream made sound. Above, the surface of the water grew smooth, waves folding into long, unbroken lines. The stars reflected with clarity, mirrored as if painted directly onto the sea. The chorus rose to meet them, unseen but powerful. In that moment, it seemed the sky and the ocean had become one vast body, held together by the song's rhythm. The whales turned slowly upward, their spiral guiding them toward the silver beams of moonlight. Their voices climbed with them, rising in pitch and strength, though never losing their calm. The dolphins followed, leaping briefly into the air before sliding back into the glow below. The entire ocean seemed to lift with them, drawn upward in sound. In hidden caves, echoes of the song lingered long after the whales had passed. The notes clung to stone, resonating like bells within the walls. Creatures curled deeper into their shelters, rocked by vibrations they could not see. Even in silence, the memory of the song remained a hum that carried on within the earth itself. The whales paused in their spiral, bodies drifting closer together. The sound softened into a single, long note, low and steady. The dolphins circled at the edges, their lighter tones like silver threads weaving around the darker hum. The ocean grew stiller, listening. The song seemed to settle into the water as though it belonged to eternity. The note spread outward, endless in its reach. It crossed trenches, rolled over ridges, and slipped across shores. Where it touched, hearts slowed, breaths deepened, and silence filled the gaps where noise once lived. The song was not only sound, it was rest itself, given shape and carried freely across the ocean's endless body. The whales drifted again into motion, circling the spiral once more. Their voices rose and fell together, each note steady and tender. The dolphins joined in playfully, their tones skipping like light on the surface of water. The chorus became fuller, richer, yet never hurried. The sea absorbed it all, a lullaby vast enough for every dreamer. The whales swam deeper once again, their voices dropping into tones so low they seemed to blend with the earth itself. The vibrations touched the sand and stone, sending faint ripples across the ocean floor. Fish settled close to the ground, their bodies stilled by the sound. Even shadows swayed with the rhythm, soft and slow. The young whale followed, its voice steady among the deeper tones. It sang with a note that climbed above the rest, weaving light into the darkness. The older whales answered patiently, folding the sound into theirs until harmony filled the water completely. The ocean carried the balance, holding every voice like threads of a single song. The dolphins rose higher, their tones flickering like sparks across the top of the harmony. They leapt briefly through the surface, splashing silver arcs into the moonlight before gliding back down. The sound never broke, flowing continuously between whales and dolphins, a seamless exchange that wrapped the sea in endless calm. Currents shifted around the spiral, soft streams carrying the music outward. They wove the sound into distant places, filling caverns, trenches, and shores with its rhythm. The sea seemed to expand with the song, stretching into silence, then returning with peace. The whales continued their circle, steady and unhurried, their voices patient as tides. The chorus grew softer, not weaker but slower, as if the song itself was resting. Each note lingered longer before fading. The water carried it with gentleness, holding the tones like fragile lanterns. Fish swam closer together, their bodies drifting in unison. The entire ocean seemed to sway, rocked gently by a lullaby no one could resist. Far above, clouds drifted across the moon, softening its silver light. The whales' voices filled the gap, carrying calm upward into the sky. The stars glimmered faintly through the shifting mist, their light blending with the song. It was as though the ocean and the heavens shared a single breath, both resting in harmony. The whales' spiral tightened once more, their bodies drawing close. Their voices converged into a single, deep tone that resonated across the sea. The dolphins circled just outside, their higher notes wrapping gently around the hum. The ocean vibrated with fullness, a sound that seemed to hold the whole world inside it. The sound stretched on endlessly, a ribbon of calm without break. It touched shores where waves grew smaller, it brushed ships that rocked more gently, and it reached dreamers whose hearts slowed as they slept. The note was not a message, but a presence, a reminder that rest had always belonged to the sea. The whales shifted again, splitting the tone into layers. Some voices sank deeper, others climbed higher, all blending into a chorus that filled the ocean from floor to surface. The dolphins added shimmering threads, weaving lightness through the depth. It was a tapestry of sound, a fabric that wrapped every creature in safety. As the spiral slowed, the whales drifted outward into looser arcs. Their voices softened further, notes fading like echoes into the distance. Yet the harmony remained whole, unbroken. The dolphins lingered near the edges, their tones light and playful, fading more gently now. The ocean sighed with them, carrying the song into stillness. The whales moved slowly apart, their circles stretching wider until they drifted like shadows across the sea. Their voices softened, less frequent, but each note lingered longer in the water. The dolphins swam quietly between them, their tones gentle, weaving final threads through the fading harmony. The song thinned, but it did not weaken. The young whale lingered near the center, lifting its voice once more. Its tone was clear, steady, and unafraid. Rising above the quiet, the older whales answered with deep, patient notes that folded around it like arms. The balance between them carried a message of trust, of guidance shared and accepted. The sea breathed with their unity. The spiral loosened until there was no pattern, only drifting bodies carried by the current. Yet their voices continued, sparse but perfectly timed. Each tone felt like a lantern set adrift, glowing before fading into the distance. The ocean became a river of sound, each note guiding the sea toward deeper rest. Far below, the trenches absorbed the final echoes. The stone walls vibrated faintly, holding the tones long after the whales had passed. Creatures hidden in shadows felt the hum within their shells, and they grew still, as if wrapped in invisible comfort. The abyss, once heavy and silent, now carried a memory of song. The dolphins slowed, their playful leaps gone, their bodies gliding with quiet grace. Their higher tones fell softer now, fading into the deeper chorus. They lingered near the whales, content to drift in the glow of the last notes. The sea carried their gentleness outward, mixing it with the calm of the whales' voices. Above, the clouds thinned, revealing the moon again. Its silver light spilled onto the surface, meeting the fading song below. Together they formed a final harmony, light above, sound below, blending into one. The ocean reflected the stars more clearly now, as though the song had polished the water into a mirror for the sky. The whales lifted slowly toward the surface, their shadows rising like mountains beneath the water. Each time one sang, the note rose with them, carrying the last of the chorus into the open air. Though unheard by human ears, the vibration touched the waves, steadying them, smoothing their motion into calm ripples. At the surface, the whales exhaled in misty plumes, silvered by moonlight. The sound was soft, like sighs, echoing faintly above the water. For a moment, silence followed, broken only by the hush of waves. The chorus had ended, but its presence remained, woven into the sea like a memory that would never fade. The whales drifted apart again, each moving into the wide ocean. Their bodies shimmered faintly in the moonlight before fading into the distance. The dolphins circled once more, then followed, leaving the water still and quiet. Yet the silence was not empty. It was filled with the calm they had created, a peace that lingered long after sound. The sea grew still, its waves slow and gentle. The stars reflected clearly, and the moon's glow stretched across the horizon. The song was gone, yet it remained in every ripple, in every dream touched by the ocean's breath. The whales had left their lullaby behind, not as sound, but as rest, a gift that would last as long as the sea itself. The lighthouse keeper's dream. At the edge of a narrow headland, a lighthouse rose from black rock, its stones warmed by a small fire in the keeper's hearth. Night pressed in like deep velvet. Waves folded against the cliff in slow, patient breaths. Inside, the keeper set his logbook aside and leaned back in a worn chair. The room smelled of salt and smoke. Beyond the window, the lamp's glow turned the mist to soft gold. He added a single log to the fire. Sparks lifted, drifted, and vanished up the chimney. The kettle murmured on the iron grate, keeping time with the tide below. He did not feel lonely. The sea had a way of filling a room without a sound. He sipped his tea, watched the lamplight sweep the horizon, and felt his shoulders settle. The flame in the hearth breathed gently. On the table lay a brass compass, a tin of matches, and a shell shaped like a curled moon. The shell caught the firelight and glowed from within, as if remembering sunlit water. He placed it by the window so it could listen to the waves. The lamp above turned once more, leaving a ribbon of light across the mist. It felt like a hand laid lightly on the sea. The keeper closed his eyes and listened. The lighthouse creaked softly, wood answering wind, stone answering tide. Far below, water climbed and fell along the steps cut into the rock. The rhythm never hurried. He breathed with it, long and slow, and the room grew larger, as if the walls had drifted outward to make space for rest. On a shelf rested a row of small bottles. Each held something saved from another night. A curl of rope scented with tar, a blue feather from a gull's wing, a pebble polished by storms. He touched the glass and felt the coolness of it steady his pulse. The collection was not for use, only for remembering that the sea could be tender. Outside, a ribbon of fog slid past the window. The lamp washed through it, and the fog brightened like breath on cold air. Somewhere in that moving silver, a bell buoy tolled, low and kind. The note entered the keeper's chest and stayed there. He set his cup down, folded his hands, and let the tide of sound carry the room towards sleep. The fire lowered itself, no longer licking at the log, only nestling into coals. Their glow touched the stones with a quiet red. Shadows climbed the wall in slow waves that matched the roll of the sea. In the far corner, a wool blanket waited on a narrow bunk. He did not rise. The chair held him, and the lighthouse breathed for him. He thought of sailors who looked for this light, and of nights when storms roared like iron across the cliffs. Those were nights for action. This was not such a night. This was a night for listening. The lamp turned, the sea answered, and between them lay a corridor of calm. He stepped into it without moving, carried by the rhythm alone. A faint draught slipped under the door and turned the page of his logbook. The ink line read, "Clear sky, steady swell, lamp true." He smiled and let the page rest where it fell. The words felt finished. The lighthouse required nothing more. He placed a hand on the chair arm and felt the grain of old wood, smooth as river stone from years of keeping vigil. Sleep arrived like a fog bank, gentle and complete. His chin lowered, his breath slowed, and the room seemed to tilt into the dream. The lamp continued its sweep over water. The coals held their glow. The sea climbed and fell against the rock. Within that steady trinity of light, warmth, and tide, the keeper drifted, the lighthouse dreaming with him. In his dream, the lighthouse stretched taller than the sky, its lamp a star among stars. The sea below was vast yet quiet, each wave curling like a hand beckoning him deeper into rest. The keeper walked the spiral stair with ease, his lantern unlit. He did not need its glow. The walls themselves shone softly, as though they remembered every flame ever lit within them. The stair opened into a room he had never seen. Shelves of driftwood lined the walls, filled with jars that glowed faintly. Each jar held a memory, not only his but from all who had kept watch. Storms pressed into glass. Laughter rode inside another. Some jars held silence so complete that even the sea could not break it. He touched one and felt warmth. The jar showed him a night long ago when he had stood young and strong at the same window. He remembered the sharp scent of rain, the whip of salt against his face, the fierce pride of holding the lamp true. Yet the jar softened the memory, smoothing its edges until only calm remained. He placed it back gently, as if it might sleep. Another jar drew his eye. This one held only a feather, caught on the wind and carried inland. When he lifted it, the room filled with a cry of gulls, soft and distant. He closed his eyes, and the sound wrapped around him like the wool blanket on his bunk. He breathed once, twice, and the feather seemed to breathe with him. He moved deeper into the dream, past rows of jars that hummed faintly as he passed. The light grew warmer, filling the room with amber. The shelves seemed endless, reaching higher than his eyes could follow. Each jar was simple, yet together they made the space glow as if the sea itself had poured its calm into glass for safekeeping. At the far wall stood a chair, older than the one in his waking room. A small table sat beside it, holding a cup already steaming. He sat, and the chair welcomed him as though it had been waiting all his life. The steam from the cup rose slowly, curling in shapes like tides. He lifted it, and the tea tasted of salt and fire. Through the window of this dream room, the sea was silver, stretched flat beneath a wide moon. No storms rose, no fog pressed in, only still water lay beyond. He watched it for a long time, until he could no longer tell whether the sea moved or if it was only his breath that stirred. The horizon disappeared into calm. The lamp in this dream lighthouse turned without flame. Its glow was endless, soft and clear, spilling across the sea like milk poured into dark tea. He thought of ships far away, their sailors turning in bunks, eyes closing under the sweep of light. He did not see them, but he knew they felt it, as steady as his own heartbeat. He leaned back, the chair steady under him, and let the sound of the ocean drift upward through the stone. The rhythm of waves became the rhythm of his pulse. He could not tell which began first. He did not need to. Both carried him in the same direction, deeper and deeper into stillness, where even thought grew slow. The shelves faded, the jars dimmed, yet their warmth lingered. The tea cooled, but the taste of it stayed. He felt the dream shifting, carrying him back toward his waking chair. Yet he did not resist. The lighthouse was always both a place and a dream. Whether in stone or in sleep, he kept its light steady, and he rested in its glow. The keeper stirred in his chair, half aware of the fire's glow against the stone walls. The dream still lingered, clinging like mist to his thoughts. He let his eyes close again, and the boundary between waking and sleeping dissolved. The sound of the tide grew louder in his mind, each swell rocking him into deeper rest. The lighthouse seemed to breathe with him. Its stones expanded and settled in rhythm with his chest. The fire shifted, sighing through the chimney. Even the lamp above, steady in its turning, felt like a heart guiding the night. The keeper's hands rested in his lap, loose and still, as if the weight of years had been set aside. He dreamed again, this time of walking a beach at dawn. The sand was cool beneath his feet, smooth and endless, the tide brushing close without hurry. Seashells gleamed in the dim light, each one glowing faintly as though holding its own flame. He bent to pick one up, and its warmth spread into his palm like a coal from the hearth. As he held the shell, the sound of the sea deepened. It no longer broke in waves, but rolled like a single, endless note. He lifted the shell to his ear, expecting the familiar rush of surf. Instead, he heard his own heartbeat, slow and steady, echoing through the chamber of the shell. The sea and his pulse had become one. The sky above shifted to twilight, stars showing one by one. They mirrored themselves on the wet sand, so that the beach looked like a second sky. He walked between them, neither above nor below, drifting in a corridor of light. The shell glowed brighter in his hand, and the sound within it grew softer until it matched his breath. A lantern appeared ahead, its flame steady but small. It swung gently from a post planted in the sand, though there was no wind. The keeper approached, and as he did, the lantern grew warmer, its glow spreading across the beach. It reminded him of the lighthouse lamp, but gentler, a guide meant not for ships, but for dreamers. When he reached the lantern, he found a bench beside it. The wood was weathered, smoothed by time, as though countless others had rested there before him. He sat, placed the glowing shell beside him, and watched the tide curl close. The waves left no sound now, only motion, like the slow breathing of the earth itself. In the distance, another light appeared, then another, until the horizon was dotted with small flames. They did not flash or waver. They burned steadily, spaced like stars fallen into the sea. He knew they were not ships. They were beacons, each one carrying the rest of a different dreamer, each one a hearth against the night. The keeper closed his eyes and listened to the harmony of the lights. They did not sing with voices, but with warmth, a quiet chorus that reached him without sound. He felt his shoulders loosen, his breath lengthen, and his mind drift further away from thought. The lantern beside him pulsed softly, as though it had joined his heartbeat. The dream shifted once more, carrying him back toward the lighthouse. He did not resist. He could feel the stone walls waiting, the fire still glowing, the lamp still turning. His chair welcomed him again, and the blanket on the bunk stirred in the draught. The night had not changed. Only he had settled deeper into its calm. The fire whispered softly, its coals glowing red against the stones. The keeper sat unmoving, his eyes closed, though he felt the warmth spread across the room. The draught under the door stirred the edges of the logbook again. He did not open his eyes. He knew the night was steady, the lamp still turning, the sea still breathing below. Sleep folded him into another vision. This time he stood on the gallery outside the lantern room. The sea stretched in every direction, smooth as glass. The stars reflected without ripple, so that he seemed to stand between two skies. The lamp turned above him, its light blending with the constellations until he could not tell them apart. The keeper leaned on the railing and looked down. Instead of waves, he saw lanterns drifting just below the surface. They glowed like embers floating in water, hundreds of them, each swaying gently with the current. The sight filled him with ease. He did not wonder where they had come from. He simply accepted them as part of the sea. One lantern rose slowly until it reached the gallery. It hovered at eye level, glowing steadily, as if it had chosen him. The flame inside flickered once, then steadied, casting a circle of light across his hands. He cupped it without fear. The lantern was weightless, warm, and it seemed to hum with a rhythm that matched his heart. When he closed his eyes, the lantern's light continued to shine behind them. It filled his thoughts with the sound of calm waters. Each note of the sea stretched long and slow. He felt as though the lantern was not guiding ships, but guiding him, carrying him inward toward the deepest layers of rest. The hum stayed with him as he breathed. The lantern drifted from his hands and floated back into the sea of lights. It joined the others without hurry, merging into the pattern until it was no longer separate. The keeper watched until all the lanterns became a single glow across the horizon, like a dawn made of firelight instead of sun. The world seemed held in that glow. The dream carried him back inside, down the spiral stair of the lighthouse. His steps were silent, yet each one echoed faintly, as though the stone itself remembered every footfall that had ever touched it. The sound was gentle, steady, and matched the slow rhythm of the sea outside. The stairwell became another lullaby, circling downward. At the base of the stair, the fire still glowed. The coals pulsed with faint red, their light reaching across the room in waves. He lowered himself into the chair once more, and the chair accepted him as though he had never left. The warmth of the coals settled into his bones, easing every muscle, every thought, every lingering sound of the sea. He rested with his head tilted back, his breath matching the quiet pulse of the coals. The sound of the tide rose faintly through the stone floor, each swell timed with his chest. The lighthouse no longer felt like a building. It felt like an extension of the sea itself, its heart beating in rhythm with the waves that cradled the rock below. The keeper did not know if he was awake or dreaming. It no longer mattered. The fire glowed, the lamp turned, and the sea carried its breath into the night. He was part of it, not separate, not watching. His thoughts had loosened like rope in water, drifting free. The lighthouse kept its vigil, and he kept his rest, both steady, both eternal. The keeper's chair rocked gently, though no hand moved it. The motion matched the rhythm of the tide against the rocks. His eyes remained closed, his breath even. The fire dimmed to embers, but its glow lingered. Shadows climbed the walls like soft waves, folding the room into a cradle of stone and light, where time no longer pressed. He dreamed of the lanterns once more, this time spread across the open sea. They drifted in long lines, marking paths across the water. None hurried, none dimmed. Each flame was steady, as if bound to the heartbeat of the ocean itself. He walked among them as though the sea had become a road paved in light. The lanterns led him to a quiet shore where sand glowed faintly beneath the moon. There was no wind, no call of birds, only the hush of waves folding gently at his feet. He set one of the lanterns down, and the flame sank into the sand without extinguishing, spreading warmth through the ground as if the earth had claimed it. He followed the shoreline until the lighthouse appeared once more, its beams sweeping across the horizon. It did not shine harshly, but with the same gentle rhythm as the lanterns. The keeper felt no need to tend it. The lamp turned on its own, eternal in its calm. He bowed his head to it as he passed, grateful for its steady glow. The The dream carried him inside again, where the shelves of jars flickered softly. Some glowed faintly, others barely at all, but each was alive in its own way. He touched one jar and felt the memory of laughter, distant but warm. Another jar hummed with the sound of calm seas. Together they formed a library of peace, preserved for the night. The jars faded into mist, leaving only the chair, the hearth, and the sea. He sat once more, holding nothing, yet his hands felt full. His thoughts had slowed into shapes too simple to name. He breathed, and the air felt like water. He rested, and the stone beneath him felt like waves. The line between land and ocean was gone. The lighthouse breathed around him. The wall swelled softly with each turn of the lamp, and the floor pulsed faintly with each wave against the rock. The fire's glow synchronized with it all, as though every element of the lighthouse was bound to the same rhythm. He drifted within that rhythm, neither awake nor asleep, but deeply at rest. Outside, fog returned, moving gently across the water. Instead of hiding the sea, it revealed it in new shapes. The beam of the lamp cut through, creating corridors of light that seemed to stretch forever. Ships were nowhere in sight, yet the keeper knew that if there were any, they would find comfort in the glow, just as he did now. The fire lowered itself into quiet coals, each spark fading slowly. The stones held their warmth, sending it outward into the room. The air smelled of salt and ash, familiar and soothing. He let his hand rest on the arm of the chair, fingers curled loosely, as though he were holding the edge of a dream that would never slip away. His breath slowed further, each inhale long, each exhale longer. The lighthouse kept its vigil, the lamp sweeping the horizon, the sea answering in waves, the fire glowing in silence. He was part of all three, bound into their cycle of light, water, and flame. The night asked for nothing more. He gave it his stillness in return. The keeper dreamed once more, this time of a quiet harbor. The sea was calm, the boats moored in still water. Their sails hung loose, their masts silent against the sky. Lanterns swayed faintly at the docks, their reflections stretching long across the surface. No voices stirred, the harbor held only rest, as if waiting for him alone. He walked the wooden planks, each step creaking softly beneath his boots. The air smelled of salt and rope, yet it carried none of the sharpness of storms. Instead, it was softened, rounded, gentle. The lanterns guided him forward, leading him to a bench at the edge of the pier. He sat, hands folded, and felt the sea hold its breath with him. The boats in the harbor rocked in time with the tide, slow and measured. Their hulls whispered against the wood, the sound as steady as a heartbeat. He leaned back on the bench, his body light, his thoughts empty. The water mirrored the stars above, so perfectly that the sky seemed doubled. He closed his eyes, resting between two heavens. A gull glided overhead, silent except for the faint rush of its wings. It circled once, then disappeared into the night. The harbor remained untouched, its stillness unbroken. The keeper felt as if he had entered a space outside of time, a place meant only for pause. The tide continued its rhythm, unhurried, holding everything in balance. The lantern beside him flickered, then steadied again. Its flame was not fragile, but deliberate, as though it chose each moment to shine. He watched the glow bend across the water, the reflection trembling in soft ripples. He thought of his lighthouse lamp, far away yet near in spirit. Both lights were guardians of rest, meant to guide and soothe. The harbor blurred into the lighthouse once more, the dream folding into the waking place. He sat again in his chair, the fire still glowing at his side. The lamp above swept its circle across the sea. He no longer knew if the harbor had been real, or if it lived only in his mind. It did not matter. The calm remained with him. He opened his eyes briefly, just enough to see the coals. They pulsed softly, as though breathing, and he matched his breath to theirs. The sound of the tide was steady below, lifting and falling like the lungs of the world. He closed his eyes again, content. The lighthouse and the sea would keep their rhythm. His only task was to rest. The dream deepened once more, carrying him into a vast expanse of open water. No land showed on the horizon. The sea and sky merged into one. A single star glowed above, reflected perfectly below, so that he seemed suspended between them. He floated on a calm tide, weightless, carried by nothing but stillness. The star pulsed faintly, and the water pulsed with it. The light seemed to enter his chest, glowing behind his ribs. With each breath, the glow spread further, softening his limbs, quieting his thoughts. He realized the star was not above or below. It was within him, a steady flame that had always been part of his watch. The star faded into the rhythm of the tide, and the dream carried him back to the lighthouse. The chair held him, the fire warmed him, and the lamp swept its light. He felt no weight in his body, no burden in his mind. He belonged entirely to the night, resting within its arms. The sea and the sky breathed together, and he breathed with them. The fire dimmed into its last embers, but their glow was steady, warm enough to fill the room. The keeper's breathing matched the faint crackle, long and slow. Outside, the waves folded into the rocks without urgency. Their rhythm sorted. The lighthouse kept its vigil, and he kept his rest. Together they formed a single circle of calm. The dream brought him once more to the shelves of jars. They glowed faintly in the dark, each holding a memory. He touched one, and it opened like a gentle wave, showing him a quiet evening long past. The memory did not disturb him. It soothed him, reminding him that even storms had ended, leaving calm behind. Another jar called to him, filled only with silence. When he opened it, the silence spread through the room like a tide. It was not empty, but full, brimming with peace that needed no sound. He breathed it in, and it settled deep in his chest. The jar closed again, and the silence remained, woven into the rhythm of his heart. The jars faded, leaving only the lighthouse walls. Their stones glowed faintly, as though they held the same silence within them. He leaned back, and the chairs seemed to rock in time with the sea. His hands grew lighter, his body softer, until he felt like part of the stone itself, steady, grounded, yet floating in endless calm. The lamp above turned, sweeping its light across the horizon. Though he could not see it, he felt the glow reach him, brushing his thoughts with warmth. The beam moved like a hand over the water, smoothing every ripple. Each turn of the lamp deepened his rest, guiding him further away from the world of waking. In the dream, he saw the lanterns again, scattered across the ocean. They drifted endlessly, each flame steady, each light calm. They looked like stars fallen into the sea, and he knew they belonged to every dreamer resting that night. The lanterns carried their sleep, guiding them safely through the hours of darkness. He placed his own lantern among them. It glowed without flicker, steady as the beam of his lighthouse. He watched it drift outward, joining the others, merging into the sea of light. It did not vanish. It became part of something greater, a constellation across the water that promised safety and rest to all who dream. The ocean and sky blended fully, and he floated between them. The lanterns above and below shone together, forming a path of endless glow. He followed it without walking, carried gently, weightless. The sea beneath him no longer felt vast. It felt like a blanket, spread wide and soft, holding him in its embrace. The dream grew softer, dissolving into warmth and light. The sound of the sea faded, the glow of the lamp dimmed, until only the steady rhythm of his breath remained. He no longer felt separate from the lighthouse, or the sea, or the night. He was within them, and they within him, all bound by the same stillness. The fire's last ember glowed once, then fell quiet. The lamp above turned, the sea below breathed, and the lighthouse stood in calm. The keeper rested fully, his dreams cradled by stone, flame, and tide. The night asked for nothing more. It held him, safe and steady, as the horizon waited for dawn far beyond his sleep.